Hey guys, I'm back. Wasn't going to do this as a live, but I figured just do it live and be done with it. Kind of wait and see if anybody joins us. It's a pop-up live, so maybe not. I didn't sleep well last night, so I am more of a hot mess than normal. I just kind of threw my hair up and went with it. So last night was the candlelight vigil for the students, and I watched it, and it really got me. And I've got a few clips of that I'm going to share with you. A little bit of new information, and just kind of go over what we know, what we don't know, and maybe why we don't necessarily need to know everything. All right. So to start off, Xana and Ethan's timeline, it still bugs me because we have almost a 5-hour gap. I think it's 4 hours and 45 minutes that we don't have any information about. And I just wonder why. And there's digital evidence out there. Their phones were pinging wherever they were at. Surely people saw them. Maybe there's camera footage of them from wherever they were at. And it's just weird that we seem to know so much about Maddie and Kaylee's night, but we really don't know that much about Xana and Ethan. Just they were at that party and then they were home, and that's it as far as law enforcement has come out and told us. The surviving roommates, again, now maybe it's not as important for us to know exactly what Dylan and Bethany did that night, but I would like to know not so much where they were, but what time did they get home? The LE timeline is at 1 a.m. for them. So I don't know where they got that from, but what time did they get home? Where did the 145 come from for Xana and Ethan? And what about the call at midnight? If you remember, Xana's dad in his interview said he talked to her at midnight and she was at home hanging out with Ethan. So was she at home, or did she just say she was at home, or did he assume she was at home? Were they there at midnight and then they left and went somewhere else until 1:45? We don't know. And as far as the surviving roommates, like I said, did they have any guests over? They haven't told us that. For whatever reason, they aren't telling us that. Not necessarily to spend the night, but did they have anybody over even for a little while? Or have, kind of like a after party situation, wherever they were, they left, they came home and hung out for a little while longer. We don't know. They haven't told us. Did they interact with the other 4 when they came home? Or were they already downstairs in their bedrooms? Did they, say hi to them, have any kind of interaction with the other 4 when they came home? Did they hear anything like a scuffle, a voice, the doors opening, anything during the time of the attack? Again, we don't know. They haven't told us. And what caused them to call 911? Now, yesterday's video, I talked about the different theories of the 911 call, about the dad saying one thing, Ellie saying something else. The dad said they had tried to call or text or something to Kaylee and she wasn't answering, so they assumed something was wrong, that she was unconscious, whatever, and that's why they called 911. The other story was that they had gone up to go to the kitchen and one saw the slider open and it freaked her out, and they saw Ethan and one of them fainted and they went out of the house. They were hysterical. Somebody called 911 because the one had fainted. She was unconscious. That makes sense to me, but we don't really know what prompted the 911 call. Again, they haven't told us. Were the surviving roommates aware of anything specific before the attack? Any ideas, like, who do they suspect and why? Hi, Steph. Ellie has cleared up some rumors, but not others. Why? And this is kind of going back to what the chief said about sometimes what isn't there is just as important as what is there. So I'm wondering, how important is what they're not telling us versus what they are telling us? Like, they cleared certain people. Like, right out the gate, they came out and told us certain people that they were sure they weren't involved, but they're not clearing everybody. September 12th incident, they're saying wasn't connected. And now there's been an arrest, apparently, in that incident. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's in one of the previous videos. And someone had been riding around on a mountain bike and threatened some students with a knife. And they came out right away before the arrest. They just arrested them, I think, yesterday. And before that even happened, they were like, nope, it's not connected. I don't know how they knew, but they were like, no connection. The dog being skinned nearby. Again, they haven't arrested anybody for that, but they came out and said, no connection. How do they know that? I don't know. The other two similar murders that happened that I talked about in a previous video, the one was in Washington and the one was in Oregon. Similar times, dates, circumstances. They came out and said, nope, not connected. So there's others, like the Mustang. They cleared the Mustang. They didn't want K-Bar out there. When they started talking about the knife, they were like, no, you need to say it's a fixed blade knife. Why don't they want K-Bar out there? Do they somehow know it was a K-Bar and they don't want the suspect to know that they know that it's a K-Bar? I don't know. But it's just weird. There's rumors out there now about a guy in a mask that one I heard he was caught on camera, and another I heard he was caught on someone's camera. He had approached their door and saw that they had a big dog and was like, no, need to choose a different house. They've got a big dog, so need to pick a different house. They haven't come out and said anything about this guy in a mask. The car that was seen on camera, I believe it was from the house across the street, and they pretty much said it was not the car that dropped them off, their ride share that Maddie and Kaylee took, but they haven't addressed this car that was captured driving by, I assume, at the time of when they think the murders happened. They haven't squashed that rumor. The defensive wounds. We found out from Xana's dad that Xana had defensive wounds. We didn't find that out from Ellie. They finally came out and said some had defensive wounds, but they haven't been very specific and wouldn't even confirm that Xana was the one that had defensive wounds. And then the targeting. Oh my God. That'll give you whiplash. Just from yesterday to today, They've said, no, it wasn't targeted. No, it wasn't a person that was targeted. It was the house that was targeted. And then they were like, oh, no. We don't have any proof it was targeted. Was it targeted or not? Because they've been pushing that narrative from day one. They've been saying, oh yeah, the public, they're not in any danger. This was definitely targeted. Then they kind of backtracked on that and they were like, well, we don't know because the person's still out there. And now it's like people are giving interviews, like the prosecutor is giving interviews saying, yeah, it might not have been a person that was targeted. It could have been the property, but it was targeted. And then they come back with like a retraction, pretty much saying, oh no, he miscommunicated. What is it? Just make it make sense. And it's kind of like when the coroner came out and talked, get control of your communication. Who's going to say what the message is that you want put out there. And they've got a public information officer. Why isn't he the one that's doing all of these interviews so he can keep it all on the narrative they're going with? So I've got some videos about that just to kind of show you the craziness. Here is a video about, I think this is the prosecutor. He's talking to Brian Enton and saying that it was targeted.
One thing that we've been told is that this was targeted. That's one word that's come up, targeted. Can you shed any more light on that? Because even with the students and some of the victims' families, they've almost been frustrated by that, not really knowing what that means.
It seems like the word targeted has had different understandings for different people who are listening, and perhaps it isn't the best word to use. The bottom line is whoever's responsible for this is still at large. That can't be changed. My understanding is the investigators believe that whoever's responsible was specifically looking at this particular residence, but that's all that they can offer at this point.
Can they say whether they were looking at whether the person responsible was looking at a particular individual?
I don't think they can say that at this point. They are still, that's part of the investigation, is trying to determine who might have been the target.
Okay, so he comes out, he says all that. Then this comes out. Due to being unavailable for an on-camera response, please see the following written statement from Prosecutor Thompson. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. We want to let you know that there was a miscommunication between detectives and my office. To clarify, investigators do not believe the murders were random, but we cannot unequivocally state the residents or any occupants were specifically targeted. I apologize for any confusion. Correction. Conflicting information has been released over the past 24 hours. The Latah County Prosecutor's Office stated the suspect or suspects specifically looked at this residence and that one or more of the occupants were undoubtedly targeted. We have spoken to the Latah County Prosecutor's Office and identified this was a miscommunication. Detectives do not currently know if the residents or any occupants were specifically targeted, but continue to investigate. And then this came out. Law enforcement officials investigating the murders for the 4 University of Idaho students appeared to walk back their claim that one or more of the victims were targeted, saying late Wednesday evening that they do not know if that's the case. Detectives do not currently know if the residents or any occupants were specifically targeted, but continue to investigate, the Moscow Police Department said in a news release. Latah County Prosecutor Bill Thompson told KTVB on Wednesday morning that the investigators believe that this attack was intended for a specific person. Like I said, it'll give you literal whiplash. Another rumor that they have not come out and clarified for us is that there was a fight at the Sig Kai house the night that Xana and Ethan were there. there was a report made, I believe it was at 3:01 a.m., and the report has been removed, so we can't see it, so we don't have any details. And this is Brian Inton kind of addressing that and walking us from Sigkai to the house.
Well, we don't know much more than what you just said, Ashley. It was in the police blotter 301, had something to do with alcohol. Police did take down a report, although we haven't been able to get that report at this point. This is the field behind me where the call was made, the big white field right there. That's the frat house you just talked about. You can see with the Christmas lights, and it's all very, very close to the house where the murders happened.
I don't know if you're able to, but if you and your photographer Mo could sort of walk me that way, because as I understand it, you might actually be able to walk me at least part or all of the way from where you are to the home where the victims lived.
Yeah, we can walk you there. Again, frat house, field. This is like an apartment complex parking lot that we're in, and we'll walk you back, Ashley. And I've been telling you the last couple of days, there's it's a dense area. You know, when you just look at the shot of the house, you don't realize that all of these houses and apartment buildings are around. This is like a little walkway that the students use to get down to the frat houses. And we'll just walk up here. Be careful, Mo, because it's a little slippery. It's been snowing nonstop pretty much all day. Just looks like it let up a little bit. So we go up these steps here. And then this is a little road right here, Ashley. And you see here is the house. This is the house where the murders happened. So it's a short walk.
I had no idea. Wow. I mean, short walk, that's like 55 seconds. I mean, they could have gotten home so quickly from that frat house. I had no idea it was that close, Brian.
All right. Moving on. So, law enforcement said they want pictures and videos. And they said what isn't seen is just as important as what is. So I'm starting to wonder, are they looking for things, maybe pictures and videos from the house? You know, wondering, were things taken? Are things not there that should have been there? Maybe the killer took trophies, souvenirs from one or all of the victims. Are they looking to verify if someone was where they were supposed to be? Like, they questioned somebody and they said, there's Steve. And they said, you know, oh, I was at such and such place at such and such time. Are they looking to see if they can verify that through pictures and videos? Or, oh, my car was parked here. And then they see in a photo or a video that, in fact, the car is not there. Something like that. And then I had brought this up in a previous video that they wanted information from specific areas. Steve is not happy. Colleen just turned General Hospital on for him, which he loves for some reason, but he's still not happy. So this is the specific areas that law enforcement were looking for tips and information from. And I wondered, why? What about those areas? What are they looking for there? And you know, could it be, like, what led them to those areas? Are they thinking that's where evidence could be? Is that where they're thinking that Xana and Ethan could have been? I don't know. But one theory that I had about one specific place listed there was this, which is the Arboretum, which I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, and Botanical Garden. And in this picture, you see there's two ponds, which would be a great place to dump a weapon, to dump a knife or anything else that they may have wanted to get rid of. So I'm wondering if it's that kind of information they're looking for or something else. Yes, Steph, they definitely need to get their ish straight, because all this back and forth is not helping anybody. And the families are already frustrated, and this is just going to frustrate them even more. So the investigation at the house, they said it's starting to wrap up. They don't know when they are going to release the scene or how it will be released, which basically, from what I understand, would be they release it back to whoever owns the rental property. Everything would be cleaned up and they can decide what they want to do with it from there. So I don't know how much longer they're going to hold the scene, and hopefully they will make damn sure that they got everything that they need out of that house before they let it go. Because once they release it and it's been cleaned, they're going to lose anything that they may have not already gotten. And they said they had 113 pieces of evidence, which for a house that size and the number of people doesn't seem like a lot. If you break it down, if you divide that by 6 people living in that house, that's roughly 18 pieces of evidence per person. Then you factor in, Steve, then you factor in it's a very social party house. How many other people's DNA, fingerprints, things like that are in there, and then potentially anything the killer might have left behind. So 113 in some cases might be a lot, but in this case, it feels very low. They took 4,000 pictures, but only 113 pieces of actual evidence. Maybe they took more than that, and we just haven't heard it. Hopefully they did. Christy, I don't know if they have found any video footage in those areas. They haven't told us. It's another one of those things that they threw it out there and just left us hanging. They haven't told us if they've gotten anything. They've told us that they're getting a lot of tips, but they're not telling us from where. So they're looking at the vehicles again, and they have already processed them. We saw them while they were at the house. They were going through them, taking pictures, fingerprints, things like that at the house. I don't know why they didn't tow the cars immediately to a secure location, but yesterday they did. And I'm going to show you this video, and y'all, I don't know why, if it's the holidays or lack of sleep or what, but this video made me emotional. It really made me upset. And all it is they're towing these cars. But there was just something about seeing these cars being towed and knowing like they're never going to be driven by those people again. It broke my heart. And when you're grieving and things like that, there's just these little significant things that happen, and they can be very tiny, but it just makes it that much more real. And seeing these cars removed from the house just kind of made it set in even more that, damn, they're gone. Damn. And all this snow. If they didn't get the outside processed very well, they lost a ton of potential evidence. Yeah, Steve, we've got the soap opera on. Rachel Ray's on next. He loves her for some reason. Maybe he'll calm down. Hi, Emma. But I mean, like I said, you look at that's Ethan's Jeep. He'll never drive that again. That's the last trip that Jeep's going to make from that house. I don't know. There's just something about it that made me very emotional. I don't know why. And then this picture came out. These are the cars sitting at the lot after they were towed. And even this, I was like, if you didn't know what happened and you saw these cars parked together and like you knew who they belonged to, you'd think they were all somewhere parked and hanging out together having a good time. Right? But that's not what's going on. These cars are there because they're part of a crime scene. They're there to get processed for possible evidence in the murders of the owners of these vehicles. Well, one belongs to the surviving roommate, but 4 of the 5 vehicles are there because of a crime. And I don't know, it's heartbreaking. And then one more that broke my heart that, like I said, I don't know what it is. I'm emotional about this one. Here's the house without the cars. We've seen it with the cars the whole time. And now the only thing there is the police vehicle that's guarding the house. So slowly, any signs of the occupants, it's disappearing. And I mean, there's snow there, but it just feels colder now. Like, those cars aren't there. Like, those people aren't going to come back and get in those cars. I don't know. I'm rambling, and it probably doesn't make sense to you, but it just really got me. There was something about them taking those cars that just really affected me. I'm a sap. I don't know. Like I said, maybe it's the holidays, maybe it's lack of sleep. I don't know, but I was just like, oh my God, the cars are gone. Here is another clip from Brian Etten. He was out there when they were removing the cars.
As the search for the killer in a quadruple murder enters week 3. Police towed the victims' cars away from the house today to a secure location. And it comes as we're hearing new details from the prosecutor and police about this case. Senior national correspondent Brian Etten is in Moscow for us. So, Brian, what are you learning today?
Yeah, a couple of new nuggets of information, Nicole. We just wrapped up an in-depth interview with the prosecutor and with police. We're going to get to that in a second. But you mentioned it, this crime scene active yet again, more than 2 weeks later. Take a look. Just within the last hour, tow trucks showed up here and started towing away the victims and the surviving roommates' cars. We are told that police made the decision to tow those cars out of here. They're taking them to a secure location where they can do further processing for evidence. Still not a lot of progress in this case, unfortunately. A killer's still on the run. I asked the prosecutor about that, about if they've made any progress. Is there possibly someone they're looking at? Listen to what he told me a short time ago. Are there persons of interest and people that the investigators are looking at?
I think it's fair to say that there have been people of interest to the investigators, and everyone that they've identified so far, they've been able to exonerate. Perhaps exonerate isn't the best word, but they've been able to eliminate them as being an actual suspect. And we do not have a name of a person or persons who are actual suspects. That's what they're focusing on still.
So there's not someone behind the scenes that you secretly know about that you're just waiting on one more piece of evidence or one more piece of DNA, and then boom, this will be settled?
I can tell you that I'm not aware of any single person with a name that we're focusing on, that the investigators are focusing on.
Okay, so it could be a while.
It could be, or it could break open any time.
That is obviously not what people in this community and what the victims' families want to hear right now. There has been this hope that behind the scenes, police were making a lot of progress and that perhaps they had seen a suspect on surveillance video, something that just wasn't released to the public. I'm told that is not the case. The prosecutor telling me they have no video of the suspect that he knows of. Okay, also coming up tomorrow, there's going to be this vigil for the victims here at the University of Idaho. There are safety concerns. There are students here who are worried for obvious reasons. I asked police about that today. With the vigil Wednesday night, a lot of people are planning to go. Some people are scared, though. I mean, in other big cases, you know, the murderer will go to a vigil.
Yeah.
Is that a concern?
So there's been a lot of speculation about that. We understand that there is community concern and fear. What I can say is that our detectives are on top of their game. We recognize there's potential contingencies for kind of everything, and so we're working on that.
So a lot of the students we've spoken to said they came back to town because they want to attend that vigil, but they'll be going back home to their hometowns. They don't feel safe here. They'll continue their classes online. A couple of new nuggets I got from law enforcement today. They say there's no evidence at this point that drugs were involved at all in the killings, and you've heard them say that this was a targeted murder. I am told by the prosecutor that they don't have any evidence of which victim was specifically targeted. They just feel the house in general was targeted. Nicole?
That's an interesting new piece of evidence there. Okay, Brian, thank you.
Emma, your niece just graduated from University of Idaho. Oh my goodness. It looks like a really beautiful campus and a nice town. And I mean, I feel for the investigators because they don't deal with anything like this on a regular basis. So my best friend, who's might as well say is my sister, is in here in the chat, and I want to do something for her real quick. Colleen has to assist, so hold please.
Oh, you silly dog. Oh, he's angry. Hey,
Can you say hi? Say hi. Hi, Steph. This is my dog, Chief, and one of my best friend's dogs and Chief are actually related. And it's because of her that I ended up with Chief. So she always likes to see him, so I thought he would come on here and say hi. It's my buddy.
He's like, what's going on?
That's my buddy. Yeah, he doesn't know what's going on. You're on YouTube, buddy.
You're being live streamed
Yes.
for the public.
Oh, they said, aw.
They think you're cute.
He is cute. Okay. So something to think about is, what they were saying about the funerals and the vigil. And I know Kaylee and Maddie, they're not going to have a service for them. I believe they've been cremated, but the families are not going to have a service for them until this is wrapped up, because they don't want to take a chance that this person could end up at the funeral. And so when the vigil happened last night, when they were kind of showing from the back and you could see everybody that was there, I was like, is he there? Is he there? But I feel like he probably was. I feel like this guy is probably very cocky and very confident and comfortable, because he feels like he's gotten away with everything. Nobody suspects him. He can easily blend in with these people. And he probably went there and enjoyed it, like relished in everybody else's grief. It's disgusting, but I feel like he probably was there. Jim Clemente talked about this in a video as well. If you don't know who Jim Clemente is, he used to work for the BAU, and he is now a consultant for Criminal Minds. Had to think there for a minute. The Criminal Minds TV show. He's very smart, and I really like his insights, and I'm going to play that for you right now, because I think what he has to say is right on the money. Thank you, Seeking Rainbows.
The read now from former FBI Supervisory Special Agent Jim Clemente. Jim, it is hard for believe to so many of our viewers who have been following this story from day one, that there is still no suspect. And to think that vigil will be held tonight, that suspect they fear could even be there or show up.
Well, Sandra, that's possible, because if this offender didn't leave town, if he was unable to leave town, then he's going to try to fit in to his normal lifestyle. So if he's expected to be there, he'll be there because he doesn't want to stand out. But I think there's other things that we need to have the public look for, because there was definitely pre and post offense behavior that this guy must have exhibited, that people, he lives in the community. He's interacting with other humans. They must have seen this.
We're looking at the cars there that they have since removed from the house. Were the cars of the victims as they close this crime scene. That is still part of it, the cars, they believe. What do you believe is ultimately going to lead them to this killer?
I believe this killer must have behaved pre-offense in a way that gave him access to that home. In other words, this was not his first foray into that home or around that home. Either he knows one or more of the victims, or he's been stalking one or more of the victims. And that gave him the sort of confidence to overcome the fact that there are 6 live adult people in that residence. And that's a very high-risk crime. So he must have had the time to surveil that place either late at night or early in the morning. He had to have the availability that night to be free, to be there during the time the crime was committed. And post-offense, he may have been covering up wounds that he suffered on his hands afterwards. He may have showed up late for work. He may have made an excuse and left the area for a while. All these things, these changes in behaviors, both before and after, Those are things the public should look for. Also, before, there was probably some stressor in his life, and that could have been loss of a relationship, loss of a job, some kind of conflict with one or more of the victims, and that made him feel emasculated, and he felt he needed to get revenge, and that's why he committed these crimes.
You know, tapping into your expertise and background in profiling behavior of these type of people, what should people there be looking for? The people around them, if they know that somebody knew these people, what is something that they could be looking for as this vigil continues? I mean, one of the fathers of one of the victims said that his wife didn't even want to have a funeral for their dead daughter because they feared this monster would show up there.
Well, I think the first thing is to stop calling him a monster, because people are going to look for a monster. They're going to think lions and tigers and bears. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for a human being who did very bad things. But we have to know he's a human being. And he might be the next door neighbor. He might be the guy who's smiling in your face. So stop looking for a monster. Look for somebody who basically had a stressor beforehand, may have used alcohol or drugs to lower his inhibitions and actually act, and then he acted differently afterwards. He changed his behavior afterwards, and those are things that people in the community will see.
And that's information, obviously, for those students that have since returned to campus. Many of them have chosen not to, but the campus did reopen, and students are back there. And I use that word, by the way, because I was quoting her directly.
No, I understand.
We obviously understand why. But excellent analysis. Thank you very much for joining us on that.
Sorry, you see me like laughing and looking over. Colleen's trying to corral the dogs for me. And her little dog, Sam, I think he's the Grinch. She's grumpy all the time. And then Rec is over there making these little noises. I can't explain what's going on in the background. You might hear it. And you might hear the wind. It is insane. It sounds like a hurricane here right now. It's nuts. But what do you guys think? Tell me in the chat. Do you think it's a student, a former student, someone from the community? Like, who do you think it could be? Or do you think it could be a serial situation? I feel like it's somebody that knew them. I really do. It does have a lot of coincidences that connect it to those other murders I told you about, but it feels like somebody knew them. They were familiar with the house, like not just from the outside or the floor plan, but like being in the house. And he knew where to go when he got in there. Like, he knew who he was looking for. He knew where to go. So I feel like former student, current student, I mean, some of them did work out in the community, so they may be a community member, but I just feel like even if they weren't close, the killer knew them. They may not have known him well, but that's just my opinion. As far as like behavior before and after the crime, I'm wondering, and I'm sure they did, I hope they did, that law enforcement checked hospitals, not just close by. I don't know, Emma, you might know if there's a hospital like right there close by, but in a wide vicinity, because this person, if they were injured in the attack, which, man, I hope they were, if they were looking for treatment for their wound, they might not necessarily go to the closest hospital or the closest urgent care. They may have drove a distance, so it wouldn't look connected. So hopefully they did a very broad search for that type of behavior. And even drugstores, you know, self-care. I know, I'm not going to go into the story, but I stabbed myself in the leg with a fillet knife last year, and I have pre-med, so, you know, I'm like, oh, I can handle this, and got, you know, like the butterfly strips and the glue that you can put in instead of doing stitches, and basically I just patched myself up at home because I didn't feel like going to the hospital for something so dumb. And this person may have done the same thing. They may have tried to take care of it on their own. Who knows? So they need to look at drugstores. And again, not just drugstores like very near Moscow, but way broad spread. You know, I would go even like an hour radius. And did anybody notice anybody, like, say they went home for Thanksgiving? You know, I'm wondering if they've gotten any reports of anybody with unusual bruises or cuts or anything like that, scratches, any little thing. I mean, hopefully people are really, you know, situationally aware and being hyper observant for these kind of things right now, that at this point they could be starting to heal or be healed. But right after, within the days, the week after, did anybody notice anything, and have those tips been called in and followed up on? And then I'm wondering how much harder the holiday break. We had the Thanksgiving break, and then they have the option of doing remote learning. I know some came back to go to the vigil and then they're leaving because they don't feel safe. But then we've got Christmas break coming as well. And how much harder is that going to make this investigation as far as getting tips called in and conducting interviews and things like that? Because who's to say that when somebody goes home and they're kind of away from the situation, that they're going to think, oh, I should call that in. You know, if you're right there and you're living it like 24/7, you're going to be calling stuff in. But if you're not there, you know, out of sight, out of mind, right? So how much harder is all of that, the timing of it, going to make this for investigators? Let's see what you're saying over here. Yes, seeking rainbows. I definitely agree with that. Kaylee's ex, I'm going to bring that up here in just a second because of something that happened at the vigil last night. And yeah, I know law enforcement came out and they said, oh yeah, we don't think he's involved, but there's a lot of things that to me are still kind of up in the air with this guy. So I'm going to show you this video, and this is basically, they're talking about details and why certain things haven't been disclosed and things like that. Then we're going to get into the vigil videos and talk a little bit about what came out at the vigil and what kind of reading between the lines led me to while I was watching it.
Do you know inside the house whether the victims' doors were locked into their individual rooms?
I don't know that.
Were any of the victims found outside of their beds? Like, is it possible some of the victims were not sleeping?
As far as the victims who are deceased, I can't say for sure. And that would be one of the details that the investigators would want to protect, because very few people would know the exact location of the victims in the house.
Do you know, were any messages left behind in the house, like almost symbols from the killer? Because sometimes in other cases, you know, if it was like a fetish killing, they would leave something on the body or write something on the wall. Is there anything like that?
I'm not aware of anything like that.
Could drugs be involved in all of this?
I have not heard that there's any suspicion that drugs played a role in the killings.
So not like a drug deal gone bad or something like that?
I am not aware of anything like that.
I had to laugh. Yes, Steve very well may be a BS detector, because some of the times that he chimes in on my videos, he has perfect timing to chime in with his opinions. Steph, yes, she broke up with him, and they had been together 5 or 6 years, and I don't know if she broke up with him because she was getting ready to move to Texas, but her family said they were taking a break and that they were in the process of getting back together. I haven't heard that from anybody but them. So I don't know if they really were going to reconcile, or if the family was hoping they would reconcile, or what. And somebody had put out a theory that was really good, that he may have been mad at Maddie because Maddie may have been the one, since her and Kaylee were best friends, that Maddie may have been the one that kind of encouraged her to break up with him. And if so, he would have been pretty resentful of that. So, yes, seeking rainbows. Yeah, Kaylee needed a break. So that leaves me with a lot of questions. And them trying to get a hold of him that night, and then her sending him a message like, you know, we share a dog. Come on, just pick up. I really want to know what that was all about. So, okay, let's get into. So, he, in that interview I just played, is talking about details, and it's what I talked about in previous videos, the guilt knowledge that the killer would have as far as where the victims were in the house, how they were injured, things like that, that only the killer would know. And I get that we don't need to know everything, that they do need to keep some stuff to themselves so they can connect the person to the crime. Last night at the vigil, Kaylee's dad spoke, and I love this man. I love this man. I don't have his whole speech. I just have this one clip. But he kind of cracked me up because he was saying something about hoping that he could make us laugh, but we were probably going to have to cry. And it reminded me a lot of times when I've been grieving or I'm going through something, like when I had cancer. I used to tell my husband, I feel like I'm spending more time trying to make everybody else feel okay with the situation than I am being worried. Like, I wasn't worried. I was so confident, but I was trying to make everybody else feel better about the situation. And that's what it feels like he's doing. Like, he's trying to make us okay with it. But listen to what he has to say about Maddie and Kaylee's friendship.
I want everyone to know that these girls were absolutely beautiful. They have been friends since 6th grade. We both put them in a charter academy. They felt like they were being punished. 6th grade, they just found each other, and every day they did homework together. They came to our house together. They shared everything. They convinced us, they made a proposal to go to high school, to a regular high school. So then they went to high schools together. Then they started looking at colleges. They came here together. They eventually get into the same apartment together. And in the end, they died together in the same room, in the same bed. And it's a shame, and it hurts. But the beauty of the two always being together is something that it comforts us. It lets us know that they were with their best friends in the whole world. It's like a book. It's like some kind of terrible chapter, but there's beauty in it, and we're going to get our justice. We're going to figure this stuff out. This community deserves that. And when I look at all you guys, there's only one way for this to get a little better, to heal a little bit. There's pain everywhere. You're just going to have to love each other. You guys are just going to have to hug each other. You're going to have to be a little awkward, and you're just going to have to share. And the only cure to pain is love. That's the only thing that's going to heal us. That's the only thing that's going to heal you. So all I challenge you in the next week, the next days, is just go out of your way and tell someone you love them. Love the people in your room that you go back to, your apartments, your house. And that will make a difference. And that's something that they can see where they're at right now.
So, Steph, you were a little ahead of me on this one. Yes, the dad said they died together in the same bed. And I had theorized about that in the beginning when we were talking about how this all may have occurred, and if it was targeted at one person, why did 4 end up dying? And I had wondered if, like, say, Kaylee or Maddie were the target, if they were in the same room, then the other one probably was murdered just because they were there. And in this case, that sounds like probably what happened, that they just happened to be together. Although, if we go the route of somebody being snubbed and thinking the other girl is the one that encouraged them to snub whatever person, we're not going to say. They may have wanted to kill both of them. I don't know. I've heard that Maddie's injuries were much more severe than Kaylee's. So was somebody really enraged at her? I don't know. But it's sad and it's nice at the same time that even in their last moments they were together. But it was really heartbreaking. Yeah, she really was moving on. She was building a beautiful life. She had a great job lined up in Texas. She was going to graduate in December, move out there. She had already started moving out of the house. She just got that Range Rover that day. She had trips planned. It's all devastating for all of them. Yeah, I don't know how a parent deals with this. I talked before about my boys being in the military, and every time they deploy, trying to prepare yourself for the worst possible news. And that would be devastating to me, but to lose them in this type of way, I can't. I can't. So there is a medical center in Moscow and a hospital in Lewiston and one in Pullman. So I would be checking all of them, and then even further out. So the next video I'm going to show is Maddie's dad, and then we're going to kind of cycle back to Kaylee's family. So I want you to hear a little bit of what her dad said. And bless this guy, you could tell he was so nervous. You could tell he was so nervous, but he did a great job. He really did.
And I wanted to, when I was up here, I wanted to make sure and mention Jake. She got to have this, it was really her only real big relationship she had in her life was with Jake, who is such a great guy. And I'm so glad that she got to just have at least a little taste of what it's like to be in love with someone. And yeah, he's just a really great guy. And they treated each other the way you're supposed to. And yeah, I was really proud to just call him my daughter's boyfriend, and maybe someday, maybe they would have gotten married, you know. It seemed like it, at least.
Right. So why I chose that clip of his speech, let me just say, Xana didn't have family there. They're actually going to be having her memorial Friday. I'm not sure why nobody was there, but they weren't. We know her mom has been arrested and she's in jail in the county Kootenai, I believe. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, Idaho. And she didn't have anybody there. So Kaylee, her dad came up, Maddie's dad, and Ethan's mom. Of the three that spoke, Kaylee's dad talked the most, talked the longest. And what I found interesting was Maddie's dad, he talked about her a lot. But then at the end, he wanted to make sure that he mentioned Jake, her boyfriend. Kaylee's dad, like I said, he talked longer, he talked more than any of the other three. At no point did he mention Jack. And I know they were broken up, but when the mom did interviews, you know, they were all, 100%, he's not involved, and they were going to get back together and just, you know, singing his praises pretty much. And she was up there on the stage with him, and they didn't mention Jack. And like I said, kind of reading between the lines, it may not mean anything, but I just found it interesting that Maddie's dad went out of his way to make sure to mention Jake. And apparently, if you listen to the family, Jack is this huge part of Kaylee's life. They share the dog, whatever, but they didn't mention him at all. I just found that kind of interesting. And then here is a little clip from Ethan's mom.
My name is Stacy Chapin. I'm Ethan's mom. I'm here tonight with my husband, Jim, Ethan's dad, and his brother, Hunter, and his sister, Maisie, who are also vandals. I think you knew he was a triplet, and that they all go here as well. Okay. We want to start by extending our deepest condolences to all the families impacted by this tragedy. It's hard that we are without these 4 beautiful kids with us tonight. We're here tonight because the University of Idaho is a special place for our family personally. Our triplets enrolled here together because of the small town feel, the beautiful campus, and the Greek system. Those were all mandatory must-haves when picking a school. We visited a neighboring college, no offense if there's any Cougs here, and it felt big and logistically challenging to our family. However, when we arrived on this campus, parked, got out, we all agreed, yes, this school is perfect for us. It feels right. The people here were kind and welcoming when we showed up for orientation, and we knew as a family that we'd made the right choice. The circumstances that bring us here tonight, they're terrible. The hardest part, we cannot change the outcome.
Okay, and then they didn't have actual candles. They had like these, I don't know if you can see it on my phone. It's kind of like a virtual candle. And if they didn't have that, they had them turn the lights on their phones. And they turned out the lights. Hang on. And the parents were up kind of in that balcony area up there, and they had all the students turn towards them and shine the light so the families could see it. And it was beautiful. It was really touching. And they had like a moment of silence during this, and then after the moment of silence, they said each of the students' name, and they clanged a bell, like dong, after their name. And it was very touching. It was very, very touching. So let's put their pictures back up here while we talk a little bit more, because like I said, they really need tips. They need information. It feels like, even law enforcement's still trying to put together the timeline of Ethan and Xana, which to me is weird because, like I said, electronic digital trail, there should be something. One thing that I've worried about is if this was some sort of a fantasy killing for this person, and they had 1 or 2 targets in mind, and they were interrupted by the 2 others. Like if they were after Kaylee and Maddie and they got caught by Xana and Ethan, or vice versa, and that fantasy was not perfect. It wasn't what they had envisioned in their mind. It didn't play out like they planned it. Are they going to try to do it again to get it right this time, to have the fantasy go off like they wanted it to? And it may not be immediate. He may have to find proxy victims, somebody to stand in for these victims, get fixated on them, learn their life, learn their house, things like that. But if it didn't go the way he wanted, if that was the motivation, it was this fantasy for it to happen this way, and that got messed up somehow, it could happen again. So please make sure you get all of the tip line information out there to everybody, the telephone, the email, everything. It's right up here on the screen, but it's also in the description box. And other than that, right before I came on, I got a news alert. And again, sometimes I have faith in Ellie, but sometimes you're just like, what the F? So it says, university not formally tracking which students are not returning to campus. And like I said, the timing of this would be so perfect for I can leave and just not come back. I can say, like, I'm too traumatized by these murders to return, and they're gone. So it says, it's unclear how many University of Idaho students opted to not return to campus since the quadruple murders more than 2 weeks ago. The University of Idaho is not formally tracking, they had a misprint, which students are returning to campus and which are not, and might have specific privacy concerns about releasing student information to police after the murders of 4 students near campus on November 13th, according to officials. I'm sorry. Privacy concerns? I can see, don't come out here and tell me and the whole world who didn't come back, but not releasing that to the police? What would be the harm in releasing that to the police? Shouldn't that be part of the investigation? Idaho State Police Communication Director Aaron Snell spoke to Fox News Digital on Wednesday when he was asked if police had received information pertaining to the university students who chose to finish their semester remote instead of returning to campus. While he said he was unsure what information has gone back and forth between the school and the investigation, he also added that the school has specific privacy concerns. Snell said ISP does work closely with the school. However, I think it's safe to say, and this is a tiny bit of speculation, but they're not going to violate the privacy of their students for the investigation. I'm sorry. Violate it. It shouldn't be a concern. If that was my kid, if that was Colleen, and she decided not to go back, and they wanted to tell the police, hey, Colleen didn't come back, I don't have a problem with that. It's a murder investigation, for crying out loud. Meanwhile, University of Idaho spokesperson Jody Walker told Fox News Digital the school is not tracking how individual students are finishing the semester. I call BS on that one. When asked whether the university has made police aware of any students who have not returned since the brutal murders of students Ethan Chapin, 20, Xana Kernodle, 20, Kaylee Gonsalves, 21, and Madison Mogan, 21. We're working with investigators to provide information they request, she continued. Snell added that the question of whether police and the school are coordinating efforts to look into certain students may not adequately be answered in the public eye. But I think it's very safe to say that the school takes the privacy of their students seriously, and they're not going to violate that, he said. There are going to be no lines crossed to get information to officers and to detectives to make sure that this investigation goes. UI President Scott Green announced prior to Thanksgiving break that students would have the option of continuing classes virtually or in person for the remainder of the semester, as police have yet to name any suspects in the quadruple homicide that occurred between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. on November 13th. We have heard from students with varied needs, Green said. Some are not comfortable being back in Moscow until a suspect is in custody. Others are asking for in-person classes and the structure that life on campus brings. To meet the needs of all our students, we have asked our faculty to work with each student to complete the semester either in person or remotely. So, and it goes on, but how can this be? I really feel like this would be important information. How can the university say it would be violating the students' privacy by giving it to the police? Like I said, don't give it to the world, but you could at least let the police know. And they have to be tracking it so they know, like, okay, this person's remote, this person's here. I don't get it. I don't get it. 4 of your students were murdered. That should be priority 1. And giving whatever information you have that might help find who did this should be priority 1. And the police definitely need to ask for that, even if they have to get a subpoena. I just thought, wow, that is ridiculous. Why protect that? Just checking the chat over here. Yeah. So that's really all I have for now, but I'm interested in what y'all are thinking about it. Especially this latest article about not sharing that information with law enforcement. Like I said, to me, it just seems ridiculous. What did you make of Jack not being mentioned, but Jake being mentioned? And then the fact, like I said, I get keeping certain details close to the vest because it could impact the investigation. You don't want that guilt knowledge out there. Like, even as far as like not wanting to say it's a K-bar knife. In the Ramirez case, the Night Stalker, it got out what kind of shoes he had. And it was a unique shoe. And they had a really good print. And as soon as he found out they were looking for that shoe, he got rid of the shoes. So there's certain things that, you know, you don't want out there. Just like I'm going to be doing a video on the Delphi probable cause. And had they put it out there about the weapon, he could have gotten rid of that weapon. But 5 years later, he still had the gun. So, you know, there's things that you don't want out there. And like I said, guilt knowledge is super important. And knowing who was sleeping where, who would have been found where you killed them, things like that, is important. And I know Kaylee's family's frustrated because they have busted their asses doing a lot of the legwork on this case. They have brought so much information to LE. Like, I applaud them. And the dad, he was told by law enforcement there were certain things that he knew that they were like, no, don't say anything. And I feel like he's starting to let little nuggets slip. Just like at the vigil last night, now we know they were together in the same room, in the same bed. So, could that affect the investigation? Maybe. But we don't know whose room, we don't know whose bed. You know, we don't know about their injuries, things like that. But I get it. I know why he's doing it. He's frustrated. He wants things to move along. And it's a fine balance, right? You want information out there that's going to help your investigation, that's going to trigger something in somebody's mind. Like, oh, so-and-so mentioned such and such, or, oh, this person has this knife, or, you know, just something like that. But at the same time, you have to balance that with when somebody comes in and you're questioning them, details that only the killer would know. So I don't envy anybody involved in this investigation, the investigators, the families, anybody, because it has got to be so damn frustrating. And to be at this point and still not have a suspect, I mean, damn. You know, and we know it was a messy crime scene. The guy, I don't want to give him too much credit, but he's obviously, he thought this out. He planned it well. You know, you don't go in and kill 4 people and not leave a blood trail when you leave the house. I mean, Jodi Arias didn't leave a trail down the stairs. She left a mess in Travis's room, but she didn't leave a mess, like a blood trail going out of the house. This guy planned. You know, did he take his shoes off when he got in the house and then put them back on when he walked outside? Did he have sweats or something on over another pair of clothes and then took those sweats off and threw them in a backpack and walked out in clean clothes? I don't know. But there's a lot of things that I'm very interested in finding out. So, like I said, let me know what you all think. I would love answers for these families before Christmas. And thinking about Kaylee and Maddie not having their services until this person is caught is heartbreaking, because that's just a step in the grieving process that these families need to be able to take. So keep them all in your thoughts and prayers, even the investigators. The students have been great. They've been ordering food like pizza and stuff and having it delivered to them, which is really awesome. And like I said, let's just all hope and pray that they get answers maybe before the holiday. Something's got to break soon, I hope. But the mountain of evidence they've got to go through, it's all going to take time. And we all have to be patient, whether we want to or not. But that's about it for me today. It's been an hour, and I know attention spans are not that long, so I won't keep you here anymore. Not really sure why I decided to do this live today rather than recording it, but I've enjoyed it. So next time I do a live, I'll try to schedule it for you guys. I told you before we're going to have a puppy Christmas party here for the dogs that we're probably going to do. That'll probably be taped, but we're going to do a ugly sweater Christmas party that we will probably do live, and I will drop links if you guys want to come up and show me your sweaters. And that will just be like kicking back and chatting about whatever. It could be true crime or it could just be whatever. Anything you guys want. I think that would be fun and a much needed break from all of these heavy stories. So everybody enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good night and be good people. Tell your kids you love them. Give them a big hug